Alright guys, hopefully this is the last video I have to make on the pay-to-win topic, but unfortunately it seems like this discussion is not over yet. I've been seeing some posts today on the forums and Reddit that have started to worry me. People are making comments like this wasn't as bad as it could have been or wasn't as bad as they were expecting, and that seems to be used as a justification for the changes that were made in today's patch. I want to invite you guys to take a step back and really examine the psychology behind this could have been worse as a justification for adding a feature into the game that allows you to convert real money into currency. Of course it could have been worse. I mean, theoretically it can always get worse. Even in the KR version they could add more pay-to-win mechanics that don't yet exist. That doesn't mean that the pay-to-win mechanics that are in the game are somehow good for it or what the community wants. So yeah, mull that over, guys, and really check that logic and see if it makes sense to you. This, to me, comes down to trust and uncertainty, and I think those of you who don't understand still why the community is upset about the changes, think about those two things. In order to illustrate how trust has been broken and why we are so uncertain about the game's future going forward, I want to use an example of an interview that Got Game did with Juska, because this is the interview that convinced me to buy Black Desert Online. And I'll put a link in the description if you guys want to hear this for yourselves, but I've pulled some quotes that I feel do a pretty good job of summarizing the interaction. It starts off with Doc asking Juska about other MMOs that have treaded the slippery slope and eventually gone pay to win. And he asks Juska, quote, if there's anything you can share about the measures you've taken thus far to ensure that we don't experience that. Now, Juska goes ahead and responds, talking about Kama Blessing and Shot of Aswell and other things that have been removed from the cash shop. He uses phrases like, that's buying power with money, to illustrate the type of things that they are removing from the game. He says, quote, we've taken a lot of steps to eliminate anything that can be pay to win. This is one of the instances where I feel like saying pay for convenience and pay for aesthetic are really what is happening here, and it's a stance we've taken very strongly. Now, some people have come to Juska's defense by saying that he's only talking about the present tense, and that's, to me, just seems like a totally bullshit argument. The rules of normal human conversation dictate that when someone asks you a question, it's generally safe to assume that your answer to them is relevant to the question that they're asking. And Doc obviously isn't asking about the current state of the game. He's asking for an assurance that we don't have to experience the slippery slope that leads to pay to win. It's what he just said before Juska started giving his answer. So allowing Juska to get away with this because he may or may not have used some clever wording is completely dishonest in my opinion. Even if what he said is technically true, the spirit of what he's saying is clearly false, because he's obviously setting the expectation to the listeners, and his intent that he's trying to get across to the listeners is clearly that pay-to-win mechanics are not something that they need to worry about in Black Desert ever. Just because he uses present tense verbiage doesn't mean that the point he's trying to get across isn't clear, and that point is obviously, don't worry about it, guys. We're taking these things out of the game, and Black Desert is not going to be a pay-to-win experience. That's clearly the intent behind the words that he's using. Anyone who doesn't believe me, go and listen to that interview again. There really is no ambiguity. You can't walk away from that exchange with anything other than, okay, like he says, he's got a strong stance against pay to win, and that's what we can expect from this development team, according to their own words. There's another quote, which is ironic considering what's happening right now, that I'm going to read to you guys because it's probably the most important part of the whole conversation. At one point, he actually interrupts Doc so that he can answer a question from one of Doc's Twitch viewers. So he goes out of his way to pull this question out of chat and answer it for everyone. And he says, One of your viewers just asked, can you buy a costume on the market and sell it on the auction house? No. In our region, the items that you purchase from the auction house, they're yours. You cannot go and relist them. At this stage, there is no link between you monetizing and being able to sell something in-game. That is a link that has been broken. And I encourage you guys really to go listen to it for yourself, because the tone of his voice when he's saying this is so emphatic that it's almost like he's implying we shouldn't even be asking the question to begin with. Like, it should be so obvious that this is something that they wouldn't do. He almost sounds kind of annoyed that he has to answer it to begin with. So yeah, go check it out, definitely. But again, people have been coming to his defense here because of the phrase "at this stage." Like, that absolves the entire rest of the context of this conversation. Because he uses the words "at this stage," there's no link between you monetizing. Apparently, we were supposed to extract those 3 words from this conversation and take that as a caveat, that this is something that they were going to go backwards on in the future. Again, I don't buy that argument at all. If I'm talking to my cable company and I say, hey man, what assurance can you give me that my internet rate is not going to go up in the next 6 months? And he says, sir, at this stage, I can assure you that your rate is X dollars a month. Again, according to the normal rules of human conversation, I'm going to assume that the answer he's giving is, you know, relevant to the question I'm actually asking. So even if he's using clever words to answer me, trust is still broken if he ends up raising the rates on me next month. Do you see what I'm saying? If his intent is for me to come away from that conversation with an idea that he knows is false, then that is lying. That is dishonesty. It doesn't matter how tricky the wording behind it is. That's just not an honest way to do business, and it's not an honest way to communicate with your customers. And so going forward, we not only have this trust that's been broken, but now we have uncertainty when it comes to actually continuing to play the game. And I think that's really what's been hurting my motivation to play lately, and what's causing a lot of my friends to drop off and try other games. Because Black Desert is a game about infinite progression, and one of the main appeals of this game is that I can pour infinite amounts of time and effort and always see a return on that, always see a reward for it. And not knowing what the future of this game is, not knowing if they're just going to continue to add more and more of these mechanics that we thought were never going to be added into the game. I mean, go back and look at the verbiage of the Valk's Cry post. Remember when we thought we were going to get Valk's Cry because of that bug that showed it in-game, and Juska made a post on the forums saying that Valk's Cry has no place in our build? Well, guess what, guys? He was using the present tense in that post too. So what's to stop them from coming back now and saying, you know, after careful consideration, we've decided that Valk's Cry is going to enhance the player experience and blah blah blah, whatever other terms they want to couch it in, and go back on the promises that they made regarding to that feature as well. I mean, there's really no assurance that we have going forward that every pay-to-win feature that exists in KR and Russia, and possibly new pay-to-win features that we haven't even heard of yet, are not going to eventually come to the NA region. So sure, 20 mil costumes instead of 100 mil costumes, great. The change wasn't as bad as we thought it might be. But where do we go from here? What assurance do we have that that 20 mil cap doesn't get raised to 100 mil in a couple months when people are making more money from Awakening? What assurance do we have that Valk's Cry or loot chests or a variety of other mechanics are not going to eventually make their way into our game, hidden behind this mask of, you know, clever wording and honestly just outright dishonesty and a lack of respect for what the community wants and what the community has been told they can expect in the future? Unless they are willing to come out at this point and specifically outline what the line that they are not willing to cross is when it comes to pay-to-win mechanics and the future of the cash shop, then I don't know how we're supposed to muster any long-term motivation to stick around in this game when month from month we constantly have to worry about this becoming even worse of a problem. Look, at the end of the day, we can all go back and forth on our opinions about whether or not the current change, 80 mil a week, is too much of an advantage. That's not really the point. The point of all this is that I've supported the hell out of this game. I've convinced hundreds of people to buy it, and I've cited interviews like the one with Juska as evidence to people who have asked me if this game is pay to win, to convince them that it's not. And so, when features that have been removed from the game because, in your own words, they can be considered pay to win, are now being reintroduced back into the game months later after we're all invested, that is a huge slap in the face to those who have defended you and supported you all along. I love this game, and I'm desperate for a reason not to quit. So work with me here. Communicate. And I'm not talking about this misleading, carefully worded communication. I'm talking about just give us an actual sense with normal terminology of what you guys consider the limit of pay to win in Black Desert to be and what we can expect from the future of Cash Shop. And make us some sort of commitment, some sort of promise that we can believe that you'll stick to. Because as of now, at least for me personally, my future in this game is just as unclear as your communication.